Thanks to the subscribers from Boosty who supported me, thanks to them the videos will be released more often. If you also want to support me, you can follow the link in the description to my Boosty. Especially for you, I have reduced the prices for subscriptions to make the purchase more accessible. Enjoy watching, everyone. Description: Naruto, Sakura, and Captain Yamato go on a mission where they are attacked by enemy shinobi, one of whom uses a technique that transports Uzumaki to the past. Chapter 4. Minato moved Naruto away from him slightly, placing his hand on his shoulder as if in silent support, and looked at him attentively, even, as it seemed to Naruto, a little sternly frowning. "But I've never been sick," he said haltingly, his breathing becoming labored. "How could this happen?" He wasn't exaggerating when he said that. After spending several years at the academy, he had seen at least one student miss class due to illness. His absences were due to truancy. As far as he could remember, he had never had to complain about feeling unwell or having a fever. Perhaps it was because of the 9 tails. At least, that was what Naruto thought. "I dare to assume that this is the effect of that technique. By throwing you into the past, it weakened you," Minato answered thoughtfully. "At least as an option." "Is that possible?" Naruto responded in surprise. "I don't know, this is the first time we've encountered this." Minato shrugged. "So the fight will have to be cancelled?" Naruto smiled weakly. "Apparently so," Minato said, smiling back. "I can make some tea with honey if you like?" Naruto nodded, closing his eyes. That was exactly what he needed. He sat down on the chair again, looking down at the warm walnut-colored tabletop. Naruto definitely liked that tone, as he generally liked soft colors. Although that could only be said about the interior, since, for example, he preferred bright clothes, if not at all provocative. And by the way, about her. Naruto didn't have the strength to change, so he had to sit as he was, which brought him considerable discomfort. Taking the towel that Minato had brought with his things, Naruto began to dry his hair, thinking about something of his own. This, of course, did not escape Namikaze, who very often observed people and could confidently say that Naruto was not one of those who first think and then act. That's why Naruto, completely lost in thought, didn't match the image Minato had of him. However, he decided not to interrupt his occupation, taking out a jar of honey and brewing some aromatic green tea. After all, even someone like him could withdraw into himself. It's human nature. Naruto was brought out of his thoughts by the sound of Minato placing a cup in front of him. Namikaze sat down opposite him. Naruto took the cup with trembling hands and took a sip of the scalding, tart drink with a peculiar aftertaste left by the added viscous sweetness. Having never tried anything like it before, he glanced at the amber jar, seeing the dissipating flame of the candle through the glass, deciding that this was definitely to his liking. "Can I ask something?" Minato broke the silence. Naruto, turning away from contemplating the jar, nodded absent-mindedly. Now, after a few sips of tea, as well as the cozy atmosphere of the kitchen, Naruto wanted to sleep more than anything. It didn't matter where. He was even willing to pass out right on this table. Today he got up too early to have time to do all the planned things, and he hadn't really slept for about a week. At first, he was sent on a mission to protect the son of a merchant, who valued money above all else in his life, but Naruto, without knowing it, changed his mind, after which they parted as friends. Then, returning to Konoha, he headed to the Hokage, which is why he didn't make it before Ichiraka closed. That's why he got up at the crack of dawn today, and ended up being sent on a new mission, and he wasn't even given the chance to really enjoy the ramen. Of course, he had been able to try it recently, though not in his time, but still, there was something missing from these noodles. Apparently, the owner hadn't yet discovered that unique recipe that he kept like the apple of his eye. But ramen was ramen, and he really had a lot to do. Like learning a new technique. Or thinking again about how to bring Sasuke back to the village. Maybe even asking Sakura-chan out on a date, even though it meant more slaps. He also promised to train Konohamaru. But instead, he was sitting here sick. That's your big day to bail. The thoughts flowed more and more slowly, stretching like molasses and not wanting to come together. The kitchen began to blur, and the flickering of the fire was so calming and relaxing that Naruto, who had been propping his head up with his hand, closed his eyes. Instead of darkness, he saw some bright patterned pictures that captivated him with their beauty and incomprehensibility. Because of this, he almost fell onto the countertop, waking up in time because of Minato's question. You said the village was attacked by the nine-tailed fox. Is it one of the Bijou? There was no seriousness or worry in his voice. It seemed like he was asking just out of curiosity. Yes, that's right, Naruto confirmed, as sleep began to leave him, bringing him to a relatively normal state. And how did they defeat him? Minato's voice now sounded interested. The fourth Hokage sacrificed his life and sealed it within me. Naruto whispered the last words, hoping Minato wouldn't hear him. Yes, he was a hero to him, and he wanted to be like him at all costs. But his whole life until recently was a real hell, and not every adult could endure it, let alone Naruto, who managed to do it at a huge cost. Despite the fact that, no matter how you look at it, the fourth was to blame for all this, who decided to choose Uzumaki out of all the children, Naruto still continued to consider him his idol, and he could not even bring himself to say anything bad about the man who became the hero of the village. So you're a Jinchuriki? Namake's voice rose slightly, and it became clear that he was clearly very interested in the answer to this question. Well, yeah, Naruto answered quietly, watching as silvery steam rose from the cup. I see, Minato said thoughtfully, touching his lips with his index finger. For some reason, Naruto was fascinated by this action, and it took him a moment to realize that he had been shamelessly staring at Namake's for the past minute. He immediately looked back down at the cup, not daring to look up again, but Minato didn't seem to notice at all, because he was deep in thought, analyzing something. How have you been living all this time? He finally asked, tearing Naruto away from contemplating the cup. Naruto, who had never trusted anyone with his secrets in life, much less his experiences, always keeping everything to himself and saying that everything was fine with him, for some reason decided to tell Namake's the truth, although it was not in his rules. You've already seen my apartment. It's actually quite livable. Naruto decided to start with this, since he really loved his apartment and didn't want anyone to think badly of it. Minato just smiled at this, bowing his head in his favorite manner. Naruto sighed and continued. Nobody wanted to adopt me, and for a long time I didn't understand why. The third one provided me with financial support, right up until I passed the exam at the academy. On the fourth try, by the way. Naruto grinned. From the fourth? Minato chuckled. It was simply amazing. In his memory, this was the worst result. And it seemed that no one had ever stayed at the academy for so long. Yes, I couldn't do the clone technique, but I still mastered it, and now it's one of my best techniques. Naruto perked up a little, remembering the old days, which, of course, did not escape Namake's notice. And how did you manage to master it? Minato asked, ruffling his hair a little tiredly. Listening to Naruto's stories was interesting, even very interesting, but the day was so long and drawn out that even Namake's began to get tired. He didn't show it though. There was still much to learn. Oh, that's such a story. In a nutshell, I was set up by one of the academy teachers, although he pretended to believe in me. For him, I stole a scroll with secret jutsu, all sorts of seals, well, and having read some of it, I learned this technique, Naruto giggled. That day probably wouldn't have been too inspiring from anyone else's perspective, but Naruto, who had finally become a ninja and found a true friend in Iruka-sensei, thought the exact opposite, considering that day to be quite wonderful. I'm surprised not so much by what you did, but by how. The scroll is with the third, right? Minato asked, puzzled. How do you think I beat him? With my seduction technique, of course, Naruto replied, smiling widely and smugly. Minato smiled back, realizing that Uzumaki was indeed a very interesting person, if not exceptional. To steal a forbidden scroll, protected, he knew, by a seal placed by Senju Hashirama himself, the first Hokage, which was carefully guarded, and under the Kage's nose, to boot, with some childish technique. Simply remarkable. How had he even managed to bypass the protection and understand anything written there? That day I got my forehead protector and became a shinobi. And also found out that I was a Jinchuriki. Naruto continued. Then Team 7 was formed, and I was put there with Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura. We were doing some boring missions, completely uninteresting, until we were sent. Uchiha then. Interesting. Minato thought, losing the thread of the conversation for a second. The name Haruno, unfortunately, meant nothing to him. Then it turned out to be an A-rank mission. Can you imagine, our first serious mission? None of our guys had anything like this. Naruto continued, gesturing vigorously to better convey and assimilate what was being said. True, we had to help that idiot Sasuke, but in the end we defeated Haku and Zabuza. Momochi Zabuza, have you heard of him? Naruto suddenly asked, staring at Minato with some interest, explaining, one of the legendary 7 swordsmen. Shinobi from the village of the Bloody Mist. Not really, Minato answered vaguely, having listened to the beginning of the story, which Naruto obviously noticed. If they managed to defeat one of the 7 swordsmen, then they were clearly worth something. Oh, well, maybe he hasn't become famous yet. Naruto immediately fell behind, returning to the story again. But if it weren't for Kakashi-sensei, you should have seen how cool he fought. Of course, with the Sharingan. With the Sharingan? I won't ask where he got the Sharingan from, so keep telling me. Minato asked. No, there was certainly a lot he wanted to know. For example, about himself or his loved ones. About what awaited them in the future. But he also wanted to follow Hiruzen's advice, who insisted that they were not supposed to know this. So Namikaze did not ask anything about those he cared about with all his heart. His 3 students. Kakashi. Obito. Rin. If the first one had Sharingan, what about the others? All that was left was to hope that they had all become so strong that they had surpassed themselves. I didn't want to think about anything else, much less know. Besides, there was someone else who was very important to him. Well, I don't know where he got it from. We don't even know what's under his mask. Oh, but we tried to find out. It was like this. Naruto suddenly stopped short, deciding that this wasn't exactly useful information for Minato, returning to the story he had originally planned about himself. Well, then there was the Chunin exam, but only Nara Shikamura passed it, although I passed all the selections. If it weren't for Orochimaru, who, you see, wanted to destroy the village, then I would have been promoted in rank long ago. Uzumaki was indignant, because this blatant injustice still haunted him. But the third saved the village at the cost of his life. So you're still a genin? Minato asked, not asking about the information about Hiruzen's death, which he had already heard. Well, yes, Naruto said dejectedly, closing his eyes in displeasure. But I'm still the strongest. How brave of you! Minato chuckled, sipping his cooling tea. Not at all. I was trained by the perverted hermit for 2.5 years. I told you about it, but I didn't mention that it was all because Akatsuki was collecting bijou, killing us in the process. But let's not talk about them now. I saw so much while I was walking around the world with him. My psyche just couldn't handle it. Naruto began to complain, amusing Minato. Instead of training me, he took all my money and went to women's baths or restaurants, explaining that he was collecting material for his perverted little book. No, really. It seemed that Naruto's indignation knew no bounds. So Jiraiya is still the same. Minato smiled, remembering the times when he was his student. Yeah, the same, Naruto muttered. Minato laughed quietly, to which Naruto couldn't help but smile, laughing along with him a few seconds later. The room was filled with pure, bright laughter. Naruto, having been with Minato for only a few hours, had time to notice that even though they hadn't talked much, it seemed like he'd known him his whole life. Never before had his mood changed so much from talking to one person. During that day, he had experienced sadness, and a certain sense of doom, and of course, an incomparable light joy that he felt for the first time, hearing only laughter. When else had he felt so light from just chatting with someone? And he hadn't even been given any advice. It was an ordinary conversation between two people who had just seen each other for the first time. Looking up, he met blue eyes, in which golden highlights played with fire from the candle flame, flickering in the darkness. It was strange to admit, but the person sitting opposite no longer caused Naruto fits of aggression or hostility. Now he wanted to trust and open up, without hiding anything. Minato, whom Naruto had initially written down as almost an enemy, now inspired some respect, and even the fact that he was the fourth Hokage seemed more true than someone's fiction. Namikaze looked into Naruto's eyes, realizing that he had seen them somewhere before, and had seen them for sure, many times. But reasoning on this topic was interrupted by Uzumaki's cough, who bent over, holding his neck. "How can you get so sick?" he said hoarsely, sipping his tea. Minato stood up from his chair and walked around the table, leaning over Naruto and throwing his arm over his shoulders, helping him up. Naruto, finding himself on his feet, almost fell over immediately due to severe dizziness. Namikaze carefully led him to the stairs. Overcoming them turned out to be a difficult task, but doable. They approached a wooden door, and Minato, opening it with his foot, led Uzumaki into the room. It was a small room, on the walls of which hieroglyphs were written in black ink, denoting some ancient philosophizing and sayings of sages. The floor was laid with tatami, on which there was a futon intended for sleeping. The picture was completed by a large window, letting moonlight into the room. Had the clouds really cleared? There was nothing else in it. But due to the lack of things, the room could not be called empty, because it seemed that if you put anything else here, it would simply become full. "This room is said to heal the body, mind, and spirit," Minato said, leading Naruto to a futon. "I don't know if it's as true as they say, but I personally come here sometimes." Naruto sat up, taking off his clothes with difficulty. But no matter how hard he tried, his hands wouldn't obey him, so on the 10th attempt to pull off at least Uzumaki's t-shirt, he suffered a complete defeat. Sighing and gathering his strength, he tried again, but again he failed. Cursing through his teeth, Naruto gave up this activity, thinking that if this was the case, then he would generally sleep in the damp. Well, he thought to himself, he would be able to accept the defeat with the clothes with dignity. But no matter how he convinced himself, he didn't want to sleep so much, and besides, he didn't like the cold. Closing his eyes, Naruto began to think about how to get out of this situation. Suddenly he felt warm hands touch him through the wet fabric, and then the t-shirt was easily taken off and thrown out the door. Naruto opened his eye in surprise, looking at Minato, but he had already started putting a dry and warm sweater on him, which was clearly not suitable for Naruto's size. But from the feeling of warmth enveloping his entire body, Uzumaki wanted to start singing and even throw himself on Namikaze's neck. If only he had the strength. "Thank you," he muttered when Minato did the same with his pants and Uzumaki could finally wrap himself in a weightless, but warming blanket. He was immediately struck by a new attack of coughing, which caused a sharp pain in his throat. "You're welcome," Minato said quietly. "Don't talk too much. Wait, I'll be right there." He stood up and walked towards the door, and Naruto finally relaxed, which he couldn't do in Namikaze's presence. The fact that he was being courted like this was new to him, and caused some embarrassment. No one had ever treated him like this before. Namikaze, even after Naruto insulted him and accused him of everything possible, not only didn't throw Uzumaki out on the street, as anyone else would have done in his place, but also helped, which no one else, not even his friends, would have done. And then there was that help with clothes. As soon as Naruto remembered the warm hands that touched his body, a shiver ran through his body, but before he had time to properly think about the reasons for it, he was interrupted by a new attack. Each time the cough became more and more painful, which could not help but alarm him. Namikaze returned a few minutes later, holding some kind of iron can with a sign of belonging to someone's clan. The symbol was clearly familiar, but Uzumaki, being in an unhealthy state, could not remember whose it was. "This is a healing ointment that will ease the symptoms and relieve the pain," Minato explained, unscrewing the lid. The room was filled with the minty scent of the herb that Naruto and Sakura had once looked for Tsunade. So that's whose symbol was there. Senju, of course. Namikaze picked up the greenish ointment with his fingers and, touching Naruto's neck, lightly ran it over it, rubbing the medicine in. The skin immediately began to prickle, but the pain, which Uzumaki was very happy about, began to subside. "Thank you," he said again, throwing the blanket over him. Minato just nodded in response, closing the lid. He was about to leave, but Naruto's voice stopped him. "Minato, can I ask you a question?" Naruto said weakly, but still smiled. "Of course." Minato nodded, turning around. "Tell me about yourself," Naruto asked, hiding his smile under the blanket. "I already told you. Didn't you want to sleep?" Minato asked. "And you seem to feel bad, or am I wrong?" "Well, at least a little, huh?" Naruto asked, hearing some incomprehensible notes in his voice. "As you wish," Minato agreed, sitting down next to him. "What do you want to know? Tell me briefly about your life as a shinobi," Naruto asked, closing his eyes. "Or in general," Minato thought, not knowing what to start the conversation about. Probably it was worth it from the very beginning, but what was implied by this very beginning, Namikaze could not decide. However, there was no need to tell anything. Naruto, tired from that day, just closed his eyes, instantly fell asleep, and it would be too wrong to wake him now. The features of his face acquired softness under the influence of sleep, and nothing indicated that he had recently been angry or expressed any kind of dissatisfaction. It seemed that his face should always be like this, bright and sunny. So that from one look at him, people's hearts warmed up. Of course, in many ways it was so, but not always, and Minato knew this very well from himself. This boy, in his opinion, was capable of many things in a fit of uncontrollable rage, and to stop him and bring him to his senses would require a lot of strength, as well as knowledge of Naruto's inner world. Minato concluded all this from his observations of such an emotional Uzumaki. It was certainly worth finding out what he was capable of. This is what Namikaze decided to test in the upcoming battle. Taking the ointment and standing up, he headed for the exit. Stepping over the threshold, he quietly closed the door. The day turned out to be full of surprises. Who would have thought that, leaving the house, he would not return here alone? Minato rarely cared about people. Kakashi impressed him with his skill and strength at such a young age. Obito with his belonging to the Uchiha clan and his dissimilarity to them. Jiraiya was one of the three great Sannin. And all the others who were important to Minato had something unique to them. But Uzumaki Naruto. He didn't show any special skills. He only showed some technique that was just ridiculous to even use. And sometimes he talked complete nonsense. Just look at that nonsense about the fourth Hokage. And yet, despite all this, he somehow hooked him. Hooked him so much that Minato, who basically shouldn't care, thought about him until the morning, without sleeping a wink. Chapter 5. Naruto opened his eyes slightly, stretching. However, he had to close them because of the sun, which flooded the room with bright golden light. Judging by the slanting rays peering through the window, it was morning, and quite early at that. Throwing off the blanket, Naruto sat up and listened to his sensations. His head was no longer spinning, and his throat did not hurt. This meant that today was a great day for new achievements. Smiling to himself, he briskly jumped up and headed to the kitchen, hoping to find Minato there to thank him for his care and concern for him. As expected, he was right there, sitting at the table. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Minato looked up and met the sly smile of the Uzumaki. "Good morning," Naruto greeted, sitting down opposite and resting his head on his hands. "Good," Minato nodded, pouring Uzumaki some tea. "I see you're feeling much better." "Yeah, like nothing happened yesterday," Naruto replied, taking the cup. Inhaling the fragrant aroma of the drink, in which notes of citrus were clearly discernible, he smiled broadly. "And why are you in such a good mood?" Minato asked, sipping his tea. "I always try to start the day with a smile," Naruto explained, smiling wider. "Commendable." Minato smiled back, propping his head up with his hand. Minato knew this. He himself tried to believe in the best until the very end, no matter what trials befell him. As soon as he saw Uzumaki's smile, warmth spread through Minato's heart, as he had expected, giving him hope that the day, which should be tragic because of the war and the news of those killed overnight, would be at least a little brighter. I hope our agreement about the battle is still in effect? Naruto asked, taking a large sip of tea and placing the cup on the table with a loud thud. Are you sure you're ready? Minato asked. I'm not going to feel sorry for you. Ha! Who would feel sorry for whom? You wouldn't last a minute against me, I tell you for sure. Naruto nodded several times for greater persuasiveness. Let's check, Minato said, putting his cup down. He stood up and headed towards the exit. Great, I'll just put my clothes on and catch up with you, Naruto told him, also getting up and running upstairs. Minato could only shake his head and move forward, wondering where Uzumaki, who was sick yesterday, got so much energy today. Naruto, as promised, caught up with him rather quickly, buttoning up his black and orange sweater. Having caught up with him, Uzumaki began to examine the village, because yesterday he couldn't do this because of the heavy rain. Having glanced at the rock with the Hokage and making sure that there were still only 3 faces, he decided not to focus on this, putting his hands behind his head and walking on. Usually at this time Konoha was just starting to wake up, but there were always enough people on the streets. This time they didn't meet anyone, as if there were no residents left in the village. Listen, where is everyone? Naruto asked, turning his head to make sure he saw someone. Almost everyone is on missions, and the civilians prefer not to leave their homes, Minato answered, looking at Naruto with a searching gaze. He liked watching Uzumaki's face, finding new emotions every time. He noticed how surprise appeared on it, turning into bewilderment, and then it again took on an indifferent look. Only occasionally the guy cast an interested glance somewhere. Minato chuckled quietly, putting his hands in his pants pockets. Interesting, Naruto said, turning his face to the rays of the bright sun. He definitely liked this weather better. During the entire time they walked to the training ground, they met only one Umbu, who was sitting on a pole, carefully peering into the horizon. Naruto glanced at him and immediately lost all interest in him, not finding anything remarkable. Minato, on the contrary, looked at him, frowning. Usually, Umbu were always secretive, and the fact that one of them was sitting in plain sight was, to say the least, strange. A few minutes later, they arrived at the training ground, stopping and examining the area. Naruto had never been to this area before, so he looked around the place with curiosity. It was a fairly large area, surrounded by trees on all sides. Here and there were pillars with targets and kunai and shurikens left in them, which their owner for some reason was too lazy to take. Naruto snorted in displeasure, thinking that someone apparently had no problems with weapons, since they were used so wastefully. In general, this training ground was no different from the others. The only thing that immediately caught the eye was that it was clearly larger than the previous ones. Satisfied with what he saw, Naruto nodded contentedly, indicating that everything suited him. As for Minato, he had trained here all his childhood, so he had not discovered anything new. Well, shall we begin? Naruto shouted, causing several loudly chirping birds to fly from the tree branches. And why did you have to yell like that? Minato asked, moving away from him a few meters. I'm building up my fighting spirit, Naruto explained, laughing. Do you think it will help? Minato gave him a sarcastic look. Of course. Naruto assumed an offended look, making it clear that his words were the pure truth. I suppose if you suddenly scream like a madman before a battle, it will certainly confuse and frighten the enemy? Minato chuckled. Maybe so. Minato chose to remain silent. What, you didn't expect that? You have nothing to say, huh? Naruto asked, to which Minato rolled his eyes to the sky. So I warned you that I wasn't going to feel sorry, right? Minato asked, to which Naruto nodded affirmatively. And that means you won't have any complaints against me? Yes, that's right. Shall we begin already? Naruto asked impatiently. Go ahead. Minato allowed, standing in place and doing absolutely nothing. Naruto took advantage of this immediately creating several shadow clones and sending them to attack. Minato fought them off with a light movement of his hand. Naruto stared at him in bewilderment. However, there was no time to think about it, and deciding not to use his trump card for now, he pulled out a kunai and, using a shadow clone that was standing nearby as bait, jumped, hoping to strike from above. The shadow clone was knocked out of the way by a shuriken thrown by Namikaze. Uzumaki, hoping that Minato's second delay would be a good thing, raised his hand to strike, hoping to cause significant damage, but Namikaze, grabbing the kunai with his index finger and thumb, turned around and kicked Naruto in the stomach. Naruto, having flown quite a distance, crashed into a tree with all his might, leaving visible damage on it. Naruto now realized that his battle with the enemy ninja, in which he was also thrown against a tree, was just child's play compared to the blow that had befallen him now. Namikaze had not lied at all when he said that they would fight in all seriousness. And this was amazing. Finally, a truly worthy opponent. Oh no! Naruto spat. Somehow, with difficulty, leaning on his trembling hands, he rose, first getting up on one knee and only then, finally, on his feet. Naruto was not going to give up so easily, considering what else he could do against Namikaze, who at that time was looking at the clear blue sky, not paying attention to Uzumaki. After making another attack attempt and failing again, Naruto was slowly starting to get angry, as he couldn't come up with a tactic. After a few more attacks, which Minato repelled just as easily, Naruto started to get really irritated. His eyes turned from blue to dark red, and his pupil took a vertical position. After making another attack attempt, he was also thrown back by a weightless blow. It seemed that it was simply impossible to touch Namikaze. Up until then, he had been dodging all the attacks so easily, managing to land blows. "Let me give you some advice," Minato said, walking up to Naruto, who was trying to get up from his knees again. "In battle, cold calculation is very important. Anger is also acceptable, but not what I see now." Minato leaned over to Naruto and, taking his hand, helped him up. "You will never win like that, not just against me, but at all." These words had a really calming effect on Naruto, and after a few seconds his eyes returned to their true color, and all the anger was gone. It was strange that he lost his temper so quickly. Sure, he had gotten angry when sparring didn't go as planned, but not to this extent. Usually, that happened when Naruto felt a really strong hatred for someone or something that was happening, but what had happened now? Minato hadn't done anything wrong to him. Maybe, as he said, it was the time travel that had weakened him, and the Nine Tails had tried to turn it to its advantage. He should have controlled himself better. The last thing he needed was the appearance of the chakra tails. "Sorry, you're right," Naruto replied, brushing dirt off his clothes. "It's just that when I get angry, the Nine Tails always takes advantage of it. It always ends up pretty badly." "You didn't try to control him?" Minato asked, moving away from him again. "I don't think that's possible," Naruto replied with a sigh. "Why?" Minato asked, hoping to find out as much as possible. "It's impossible to come to any agreement with him at all." Naruto's mood became cheerful and perky again, which couldn't help but please Minato. "Have you tried it?" he asked. "You ask?" "Of course." "No, of course, he sometimes gives his power, but this can have very bad consequences later," answered Naruto, remembering how the last time he almost killed all of his own. After that incident, he once and for all decided not to resort to Kyuubi's help anymore, although he offered it more and more insistently time after time. "I think there is a way to control it, at least I heard about it," Minato said thoughtfully. "I hope I learn it someday." Naruto chuckled sadly. "Shall we continue?" "Yes." "Are you going to show off your technique, or am I not destined to see something so great?" Minato asked, smirking. "And don't say it in that tone." Naruto was indignant, barely hiding his smile. "I'll show you now, so you can start being afraid already." Minato only chuckled vaguely at this, waiting for Uzumaki to pull himself together and show his trump card. Having spent no more than an hour and a half with Naruto, Namikaze could observe another quick change in mood. Now he did not even doubt that having any kind of business with him was extremely interesting. And then, he himself was very glad that he met such an extraordinary person. This was undoubtedly worth the failed mission. "Okay, watch carefully!" Naruto shouted at him, making a seal. "A shadow clone again?" Minato was surprised. However, he was also amazed that this time he had created only one, and not at least 10. Nevertheless, he decided to listen to Naruto and began to watch carefully. The shadow clone, having approached the real one, began to form air currents, forming a sphere out of them. Minato, at first watching Uzumaki's actions without any interest, after a few seconds simply could not believe his eyes, so he almost missed the blow that Naruto intended to inflict. Literally in a split second, he managed to use the instant movement technique, so Uzumaki's attack hit the void. Naruto cursed under his breath as he watched the remaining chakra dissipate into the air. Then he turned to Minato, who was looking at him with distrust. His gaze expressed doubt, indecision, and bewilderment. Of course, this simply couldn't be true, and Minato knew it very well, and yet. "Is this Rasengan?" he asked. "Well, yes, that's him," Naruto confirmed, adopting an indifferent pose, since he had long ago realized that it would probably take a demonic effort to somehow strike Minato. He didn't want to resort to the Nine-Tails' help, so Naruto abandoned the idea, deciding that he would defeat it next time. "Who taught you this technique?" Minato asked casually. Some suspicions began to creep into his soul, but Minato preferred to ignore them for now. "Well, perverted hermit," Naruto replied, closing his eyes. "I made a bet with Granny Tsunade back then that I would learn this technique in a week. And I did, by the way." "In a week?" Namikaze's voice now clearly betrayed stunned disbelief. "It took me 3 years to master it." "Huh!" It was Naruto's turn to not believe what Minato was saying. "The pervert said that it took the fourth 3 years, I remember that. But if you claim that you learned it too, then show me," Naruto demanded, looking at Minato, who, shrugging his shoulders, formed swirling streams on his palm in a few seconds. "It can't be!" Naruto looked at the ball of air and chakra, not believing that he actually saw it. "But it turns out that you really are the fourth. And here we go again, huh?" Minato asked, dispelling the technique. Naruto was once again claiming that he was the fourth Hokage, and it was starting to get annoying. Minato looked like he didn't believe him. "But I'm right," Naruto objected. "I think you were proving otherwise just yesterday," Minato reminded. "It was yesterday," Naruto muttered. "Dispel my doubts, are you offended?" Minato asked with a chuckle, putting his hand on Naruto's head and ruffling his hair. This innocent gesture sent a slight shudder through Naruto from head to toe, causing his heart to beat rapidly. "No." He shook his head, throwing off Minato's hand and driving away the unwanted sensations. "Okay, then let's go to the third. It's time for me to be at the residence, and at the same time we'll find out all the news," Minato suggested. Naruto nodded, realizing that at the moment this would be the only correct decision, since there was no point in continuing the battle. Having left the training ground, they slowly headed towards the residence. Naruto kept glancing at Minato with displeasure along the way, realizing that he was completely confused in this whole situation. On the one hand, all the facts pointed to the fact that Namikaze was still the fourth Hokage. For example, this was indicated by the undoubted resemblance to him, the Flying Thunder God technique, which only the fourth knew, and the Rasengan, which Minato demonstrated to him in all its glory. But on the other hand, what was on the other hand? Naruto, sighing, finally admitted to himself that it was stupid to deny the obvious, and that it was indeed the fourth in front of him now. But how could he prove it to Minato himself, who clearly did not believe what Uzumaki was telling him? Approaching the residence, they saw a crowd of shinobi, and from their faces it was clear that they were extremely worried about something. Minato approached one of them, whispering something. Naruto at that moment made a displeased face because he was left alone. However, he did not have time to be offended for long, because seeing that Namikaze, beckoning him with his hand, entered the building, he followed, thinking about what could have happened that everyone was literally on their ears. "What's the matter?" he asked, looking at Minato and noticing the nervously pursed lips and the frown that had enveloped his face. "We'll find out now," he answered, knocking and opening the door. Entering inside, they saw the third, who was concentrating on telling something to 3 Embu, handing them some papers. Noticing the arrivals, the Hokage nodded to dismiss the visitors, inviting Minato and Naruto to come in. "What happened, huh?" Naruto asked immediately, walking up to the table and slamming his hands on it, looking at the Hokage with a long, expectant gaze. The third one just sighed, resigning himself to such impudence. "Minato, have you been informed?" Hiruzen looked at Namikaze, ignoring Uzumaki, who had already started to form seals. "Yes." Minato nodded, separating Naruto's hands so that he couldn't finish the seduction technique. "Almost all the Jonin are on missions, it's good that you stopped by." Hiruzen glanced at the disgruntled Naruto, and a slight smile lit up his face, smoothing out the wrinkles and shadows that appeared from lack of sleep. "Naruto," he turned to him, "I could send you on a mission with Minato, what do you say?" "Really?" Naruto's eyes lit up with a feverish gleam. "Yes, only if you stop acting like that," Hiruzen replied, taking the scroll and unfolding it to show them a map of the area. Naruto instantly assumed a more respectable position, since after the third told him that he could also go on the mission, Uzumaki almost fell apart on the table, pushing several documents onto the floor. "Your path will lie in the land of rivers," Hiruzen continued in the meantime, moving the map towards Minato and Naruto. "The road ahead will be long, so the mission will be long, do you agree, Naruto?" He cast a questioning glance at him. "Of course I agree. Just explain to me what happened." "Information has been received that the shinobi of some hidden villages have united to attack Konoha, as a result of which all those who are not involved in missions have been called. Your task is to deliver a secret scroll to the daimyo of the land of the river," Hiruzen replied, lighting his pipe. "What? Another scroll?" Naruto said, disappointed. "Boredom." "Exactly." Hiruzen nodded. "The further course of the war will largely depend on this mission. Move out immediately." "What, right now?" "But wait." Naruto didn't have time to finish, because Minato, who had accepted the scroll, pulled him out into the corridor by the collar of his jacket. "I didn't really want to know," Naruto muttered, trailing behind the chuckling Minato. After leaving the residence and going to Minato's house, they gathered all the necessary things and headed to the Konoha gates, which were once again tightly closed. They had to give the password again, and after passing this stage, they left the village. They walked for more than an hour without saying a word to each other. "Naruto, what are you so unhappy about?" Minato asked, looking at the silent Naruto for some time now. "Oh, screw it, the mission is complete crap," Naruto answered sullenly, kicking a pebble. "An S-rank mission is complete bullshit?" Namikaze raised an eyebrow. Naruto stopped, looking at Minato with distrust. Not every Jonin was trusted with something so difficult to accomplish. It was understandable that Minato had been sent. He was an elite shinobi, the best of the best. But Naruto? An unknown figure in the village at the moment, a guy who only thought he was a cool ninja in words. Who in their right mind would send someone like him on such a dangerous mission? It just didn't make sense. First of all, for safety. Both internal and external. What if Naruto really wasn't who he claimed to be? What then? Either the country's military power really was that bad, or they were trying to get rid of him in this way, but keeping Namikaze under surveillance, or someone was holding something back. S-rank? No, really? Naruto's pupils widened in delight and surprise. What difference did it make? A mission with the fourth himself, and such a mission! Naruto envied himself. "I thought you realized that," Minato replied, tilting his head mockingly. "Well, of course I understood. I was just checking you out." "Really? It seems their disputes are doomed to last forever. By the way, why is the rank so high? It seems like a regular scroll." Naruto asked, genuinely not understanding. That's not true, Minato replied. Hiruzen said that this mission will have a big impact on the war. You see, it contains secret information about many countries that are participating in it. It also contains some important information about the 5 great shinobi countries, and if this scroll falls into the wrong hands, we will lose the war. And yes, if we fail, the other 4 Kage will raze us to the ground. But why does the daimyo of the land of the river need this scroll? Naruto asked, looking at Minato in surprise. I'll tell you on the way, when I'm sure we're not being followed. Are they still watching now? Yes, for Anbu. But I don't trust them very much, so I'll tell you everything later, including the details. Okay. Naruto agreed a little too quickly. And there won't be any outrage? Nah, Naruto replied nonchalantly. You have no idea how happy I am. Consider my second dream after the title of Hokage has come true. I'm on a mission with the 4th himself, it's just unbelievable. No one will believe me when I get home. Minato smiled quite sincerely. By the way, the old man said that the mission is long, so how long will it take us to return? In a month, I think, Minato estimated. If everything goes smoothly, but I wouldn't count on it. Great! Naruto grinned, adjusting his protector. Do you think so? Of course. During this time, I will definitely win our next battle. Certainly. Hey! That tone again! Naruto said playfully. What? Namikaze pretended not to understand what was being discussed. This is the very one. Maybe you could explain it anyway? You don't take me seriously. Although I'm not some kid. Naruto chuckled. Then prove it, Minato said, bowing his head again in his favorite manner. Of course, Naruto replied, involuntarily repeating his movement. The bright midday sun illuminated the road, leaving golden rays of light on her light hair. Chapter 6. Hey, Minato! Naruto called. For some time they walked in silence, thinking about their own, but Naruto, who was incredibly tired of the silence, decided to break it in the most reliable way, namely, chatter, albeit empty. What? Minato responded, looking at him. Naruto, no longer wanting Namikaze to not perceive him as an equal, decided to ask the first thing that came to mind, but at the same time creating the appearance that the question was extremely serious and worried him a lot. Where will we stay for the night? There should be a village in a few miles. I remember when I was still a genin, my comrades and I stayed there with Jiraiya, Minato said thoughtfully. Then maybe we should stay there? Naruto asked with hope in his voice. If it works out, Minato answered, thinking about something. What do you mean? If it works out? Naruto was ready to grab onto any topic, just not to remain silent, at least until that very village. The locals hardly let anyone in, so I'm not sure if the road will be open to us. For what reason? This interested Naruto, since it was the first time he heard about such a thing. Usually, all the villages in the Land of Fire were happy to have any travelers, since it brought them a considerable income, and the fact that someone refused travelers was, at the very least, surprising. Maybe it was all because of the martial law? Konoha was also closed to everyone. The residents love their village very much, so they protect it as best they can. They are often raided by both other countries and ordinary criminals. And I know that they are ready to give their lives to protect it. But why? Naruto, you dream of becoming Hokage, right? Minato interrupted, not letting Naruto finish his question. Of course. Naruto immediately answered. When that happens, you will sacrifice your life without hesitation to protect the village and its inhabitants, am I right? Yes, but what does the population have to do with it? Is it their business to risk themselves? Naruto asked, puzzled. There is no one in this village who can ensure its safety, so the villagers do everything they can. Minato explained. What is it about her that makes everyone rush to attack her? Naruto asked another question, noticing that Minato wasn't tired of answering them at all. Usually, when Naruto pestered someone, after a while he was insistently asked to shut up, which was very, very difficult to do, but Minato had never once in all the time they had known each other asked him to at least shut up. There is a legend that underneath the village itself lies what is the legacy of the Sage of the Six Paths. Minato replied with a shrug. It seems he himself didn't really believe it. Rikudo Sannin? Naruto asked, puzzled, at first thinking he had misheard. The legendary founder of the shinobi world, the owner of the Rinnegan, and also the first to become a Jinchuriki. Overall, Naruto was quite surprised. And how did he even know this? Naruto marveled at his own erudition. That's true, but still, no one can say what exactly this legacy is and whether it's true at all. Minato quickly answered, seeing how Naruto's eyes lit up. Do you believe it? Naruto asked once again, stopping abruptly and looking at Minato with admiration. Apparently, this news pleased him, even though Namikaze had just almost denied it. No, he chuckled, continuing on his way. I would check. Naruto muttered quietly, not moving from his spot. Do you think I didn't check? Namikaze asked with a hint of irony in his voice, also stopping. So, didn't you find anything? Naruto blurted out, realizing that he was genuinely interested. Stopping for just one night, my comrades and I turned the entire village upside down trying to find this legacy, after which we got a good beating from the disgruntled villagers and from the teacher, who had to pay considerable compensation for the damage we caused. Minato replied, smiling at the memory. How could you do any damage while looking for something? Naruto asked, unable to hold back his question. Actually, it wasn't worth asking him, since he himself often damaged something, just going to the store, for example. One elder told us that the heritage was under the house of the richest family in the village, and we, unable to think of anything better, decided to destroy the house, explaining that without this measure we would not find anything. In the end, we had to escape the wrath of the entire population. Minato grinned. It was clear from his face that he wasn't at all upset that he hadn't found anything. On the contrary, it seemed that Minato was actually quite amused by it all, judging by his satisfied grin. And what do the residents themselves say? They don't deny it, claiming that it's all true. But they have no proof. Even those whose house we left splinters from later let it slip that we were simply looking in the wrong place. Minato said. Then why didn't they find anything themselves? Naruto asked, feeling a little nervous that perhaps he would be the one to become the owner of what the Sage of the Six Paths had left behind. Because they didn't try to look. Minato explained, noticing Uzumaki's state. Then I should try to find him. Naruto responded excitedly. I'll be very surprised if you can. Minato replied, looking at Naruto with a slight smile as he tried hard to imagine what he now absolutely wanted to find. It's just a legend, don't bother your head with it. But Naruto was unstoppable. He thought over his plan of action for a while. First, he had to question the locals about his search. Then, after analyzing the information he had received, he would definitely find the legacy overnight using shadow clones. Of course, this would require a lot of effort, so... Are there hot springs there? Naruto asked, finally continuing to walk. Let me think, I've heard that question said in that tone somewhere before. Minato drawled, pretending to remember. Maybe from Jiraiya. What? I've never gone to the springs with a pervert in my life. Naruto was indignant, offended that they could think of him so inappropriately. Are you sure? Minato asked mockingly. Well, maybe I did go a few times, but only to make sure he didn't spend my money on women. Naruto tried to justify himself. Because you wanted to spend your own money on them? Minato asked mockingly. Who do you take me for? Naruto yelled, not at all offended. Well, what else can you expect from Jiraiya's student? Minato chuckled, trying to hold back his uncontrollable laughter. Naruto, filled with indignation, liked him even more, so Namikaze decided to see it through to the end. But you yourself are his student. Despite the fact that it looked completely frivolous, and it was unlikely that Minato would decide after this that Uzumaki was his equal, Naruto even enjoyed their squabble, and his mood was rapidly improving. I've already done my part at the springs. Minato snorted. Well, yes, of course. Naruto answered in the same tone. And what are you hinting at? Minato asked, looking with interest at Uzumaki, who was completely engrossed in the argument. You may no longer be the old lecher's disciple, but that doesn't mean anything. Why is that? Namikaze chuckled, not giving in to Naruto. It's quite possible that on missions you also visit some establishments similar to those that Jiraiya-sensei likes to visit, huh? Don't give up until the end, in order to achieve at least one victory over Namikaze. Naruto was full of determination. Well, if you assume something like that, then apparently you are familiar with it, right? To me? You. Minato nodded. Naruto choked with indignation, not immediately realizing how he could parry. Any more guesses about me? Minato asked, smiling. I have one last argument. Naruto answered him with the same smile. I'm listening. Why, pray tell, does Kakashi-sensei always walk around with that depraved book? It's all your bad influence, yes. Naruto nodded several times to illustrate his point, folding his arms across his chest and assuming the pose of a knowledgeable person. With a slutty book? Minato suddenly asked seriously, even forgetting about the argument. Namikaze had never expected this from his student. Kakashi was an excellent shinobi, cold and reasonable, putting the completion of the task above all else, and for him to walk the streets with some untrustworthy works was simply incomprehensible. Rather, this could be expected from a Beto, but not from a genius boy who, moreover, was soon going to receive the title of Jonin. Naruto, catching the change in Namikaze's voice, stopped loudly broadcasting about what else he thought of Minato as a teacher. Yeah, or more precisely, with the stories that the perverted hermit writes, he replied, immediately switching to a new topic. And what kind of stories are these? Minato asked. Come, paradise! It's called, Naruto said. I once tried to read at least one book, but I couldn't get past the first chapter. And anyway, how can you publish this debauchery? Naruto finished with a puzzled look. In truth, he was genuinely curious as to why this series of novels was still being published. Sure, Jiraiya was one of the three great Sannin, and he had quite a large audience, but Uzumaki still couldn't figure out how anyone could read it. Jiraiya writes smut novels? Minato asked, shocked, interrupting Naruto's thoughts. He was truly shocked by this news, even though Namikaze had always known that his teacher was only interested in women. And then again, what could have happened that Hatake read such works? Yes, he writes. And he drags me to these sources where he supposedly collects material, Naruto sighed, quietly rejoicing that he would finally be able to complain to someone about the teacher. But you like springs? Minato noted cautiously. I like them, but not when I'm just relaxing and suddenly a teacher runs right in front of me, escaping from angry ladies. And everything would be fine, but then they beat me, thinking that I'm also to blame for everything. Naruto exploded. Minato smiled slightly at this, knowing firsthand what it was like to be the disciple of the great Sannin. Where is justice? Naruto sighed sadly. Now he walked, remembering all the times he had to answer for Jiraiya, and so he didn't really care that there was silence again. If you remember, whenever they went to some public place, Naruto invariably suffered from the fact that he, for example, spent a few private hours with pretty girls and then simply left without paying, and of course, Uzumaki had to answer for it, who at that time was calmly resting after an exhausting training. Naruto grumbled something discontentedly under his breath, but Minato only heard the words about someone having settled in too well. Namikaze chuckled quietly at this, remembering the years under Jiraiya's guidance. But if you think about it, Naruto said suddenly, tightening his forehead protector, Sensei isn't that bad. After all, he taught me a lot, and all the time we traveled the world together, he was like a grandfather to me. Naruto's face lit up with a beaming smile. Minato smiled back with the corner of his lips. It was a good trait, after all, to forgive the mistakes of those close to you. The further they went from Konoha, the more the terrain changed. If before they were surrounded by countless trees and the landscape was mostly flat, now the forests began to thin out, and in the distance the outlines of high rocky mountains appeared, hidden in a light haze of fog. This was undoubtedly imperceptible to the naked eye, but Naruto and Minato, as shinobi, understood perfectly well that they now had to behave much more carefully, since you never know what can await you in new surroundings. Naruto, who had never walked this way before, glanced into the distance, noting that there could be excellent cover for the enemies there. Minato, who had only been here once, and that was in the distant past, carefully examined the place before their eyes, noting that the war had not yet affected this territory, which made him incredibly happy. "How much longer do we have to go?" Naruto asked, looking at the sun, which was already starting to approach the horizon. Both knew that there was still quite a lot of time before it would be completely dark, but both of them wanted to visit the village, so they were even ready to come to the land of rivers a day later. "Just a little," Namikaze replied, calculating in his mind. "By the way, have the Anbu stopped pursuing us yet?" Naruto asked, remembering that Namikaze was supposed to tell him the details of the mission. "Yes," Minato nodded. "So why does the daimyo need a scroll with information about all the countries? Why does he care?" Naruto decided to ask the most interesting question first. The land of rivers, which usually never took sides in wars, decided to give their preference to us this time, but to do this they need to know information about the other countries involved. Minato replied. "And why do they need to know this?" "The military strength of such a small country is extremely strong, and their support is very important to us. Knowing the enemy's information, they will be able to easily develop battle tactics, so I hope you understand that we must complete this mission at all costs," Minato explained. "I won't let you down," Naruto assured, deciding at that moment that he would do everything in his power. Although he probably wouldn't get credit for it when he got home, at least he would know that he once had the chance to carry out such a difficult task with the fourth Hokage himself. And speaking of which, he needed to talk to Namikaze about this again, but Naruto couldn't find the right moment or words to convince him. "Now about the details," Minato continued in the meantime. "We will have to go strictly along the border, bypassing all the points of battle, because that is where the greatest danger lies, but this does not mean that we do not need to be vigilant. In such a deserted place we can attract unnecessary attention, so always be prepared for the fact that we will be attacked." "Maybe we should come up with a password then?" Naruto suggested, remembering that they had practiced something similar during the Chunin exam. True, he successfully forgot the password then. But in the end, it was not his fault. Who knew that Uchiha would decide to come up with such a complex sentence? "An interesting thought," Namikaze replied. "What kind of thought?" "Something complicated, but at the same time memorable," Naruto said immediately, thereby warning that he would not agree to anything complicated. "Go ahead," Minato said. "Maybe a ramen recipe?" Naruto asked, thinking that this was something he wouldn't forget. "Do you know him?" Minato bowed his head, looking mockingly at Uzumaki. "Of course I know," Naruto replied indignantly. "As far as I understand, you already had experience using a password, so I hasten to inform you that it should be used in everyday communication. If the enemy simply greets you, and you immediately give him a recipe for noodles, then it will look a little strange, don't you think?" "Well, yeah, that's right," Naruto muttered. "Okay, we'll think about it later, we're almost there." "Yeah? Then let's see who's faster." "The loser buys dinner," Naruto suggested, and immediately mentally scolded himself. Of course, his proposal was so serious and important that Minato, delighted by such a brilliant mind, would definitely not resist and would undoubtedly accept it. "You don't have any money anyway," Minato chuckled. "What difference does it make? You'll lose," Naruto responded animatedly, relieved that his spontaneous idea had been accepted. "Let's see. Let's run to that tree." Naruto pointed to an oak tree that appeared in the distance. The fact that he grew up here was already strange, considering that it was not typical for this area, but neither Namikaze nor Uzumaki wanted to think about it. "Okay," Minato nodded in agreement. "I think so." "Okay," Naruto responded reluctantly. 1. Naruto braced himself, focusing only on the fact that he had to win. 2. "I have to win," Naruto whispered quietly. 3. Naruto took off, trying to reach the highest speed. He succeeded, and in a few seconds the wind was whistling in his ears, and his heart was beating twice as fast. Judging by the fact that there was no sound of pursuit, Namikaze had characteristically fallen behind, which gave Uzumaki a fighting spirit. There were only a few meters left to the tree, when Naruto saw a familiar figure and disheveled blonde hair. Minato was standing with a bored look, leaning against the trunk. "You took a long time," he said when Naruto stopped next to him, catching his slightly ragged breath. "What?" Naruto asked, staring at the smirking Minato. "I'm saying you lost," Minato said. "That's not fair. You used your technique," Naruto immediately yelled. The scream would have made anyone's ears pop, but Minato stood there quite calmly. "And you didn't stipulate the conditions, so everything is fair," Minato answered, laughing. Moving away from the oak tree, he walked on, and Naruto was left amazed that now he also owed dinner. "Naruto, are you coming?" Minato turned around, beckoning with his hand. "Yes." Naruto decided not to think about how he would kill Namikaze at night for using such tricky techniques, and trudged after him. Chapter 7. The sky, painted purple, only in the distance, on the horizon, covered with crimson red, as if someone had scattered handfuls of winter rowan, calmed Minato very much. During the days of the war, he was never relaxed, but now nothing foreshadowed any attacks or any other unexpected circumstances. A light breeze caressed his face, slightly ruffling his blonde hair, because of which an almost imperceptible, but shadow of a smile lay on his lips. A delightful feeling. And it would have lasted even longer if... "You said we were almost there," Naruto grumbled discontentedly, looking at Minato with no less discontent. He responded with a condescending smile, however, not paying any attention to Naruto's words, which had been bothering him for several minutes now, not allowing him to concentrate on thoughts about how they would get to the village, or at least on what he had been doing some time ago. True, since he would not be able to enjoy the beauty of their country today, then perhaps it really was worth occupying himself with thoughts about that village again. It was obvious that they would not be allowed to pass through just like that, and Namikaze had not even planned to go there, but Naruto's request for a place to stay overnight made him change his mind about it, and now he was trying to think of a way that would help them, but the one for whom all this was started was not allowing him to do so. "Minato," Naruto drawled, once again distracting him from his thoughts. In fact, he was simply bored, although he understood that he was clearly thinking about something serious. Otherwise, the eyes, which had almost taken on a light blue hue before, and were so carefree that Naruto was even surprised, would not have become almost dark blue again, hiding almost a threat in the depths. Probably if a certain line were crossed, Naruto would not seem to care. However, this had not happened yet, so there was no worry about it at all. "Naruto, what?" Namikaze asked with a sigh, realizing that Naruto would hardly leave him alone if he didn't answer. "Nothing." Naruto chuckled vindicatively and walked forward with a brisk step, leaving behind Minato, who only chuckled vaguely at Uzumaki's antics. If Naruto had been a little closer to him, he would have definitely slapped him on the back of the head, but he apparently moved further away on purpose to avoid something like that. The sun, which had been casting bright rays of light on the earth like a bright shroud all day, disappeared, and the previously lilac sky was covered with a dark blue blanket with a scattering of silver buttons. Naruto turned around, smiling. The twinkling of the stars always fascinated him. Pleased with what he saw, he continued on his way, not noticing the attentive gaze of blue eyes. Thinking over the plan of further actions, Minato did not miss Naruto's light, carefree smile, albeit so fleeting, which the others took for granted. Undoubtedly, Namikaze discovered another trait of Uzumaki, which he possessed. Not everyone, as Minato believed, notices such ordinary things, and even rejoices in them, as if he had seen something previously unseen. Naruto, who, unlike Namikaze, preferred not to fill his head with serious thoughts, looked around the area, which in his opinion had changed noticeably. There were many countries in the world that were not inferior to fire in their wondrous beauty, but he loved only his own so passionately. It was beautiful in every corner of it, and even the war could not change that. After some time, Minato reported that they would soon arrive at their destination. Yeah, and then it turns out we still have a few hours to go, Naruto said without even turning around. Minato remained silent about this, considering that arguing with him would be more trouble than it would be worth, even though he really wanted to. Of course, a few hours is almost like a few minutes, Naruto continued in the meantime. Of course, he continued to watch Minato's reaction out of the corner of his eye, but he seemed to be somewhat interested. The only thing Namikaze allowed himself was a barely noticeable grin, so Naruto couldn't figure out how exactly he felt about his words. The result will be the news that we have to go until tomorrow, but that's such a small thing. Naruto's voice was full of sarcasm, which surprised him quite a bit. Namikaze remained silent again, but Naruto didn't seem to need his answer. He didn't even pay attention to it now, since his thoughts, seasoned with recent discontent, were just bursting out, and it seemed he couldn't stop himself anymore. Maybe this village is in another country altogether, big deal, that doesn't happen in life, he exclaimed sarcastically, throwing up his hands. Naruto, be more careful, Minato told him, to which Naruto only demonstratively turned away. Minato looked him over appraisingly, wondering what he could say to get him to continue his theories about when they would reach the village. Whatever he said, Naruto was the first person he had ever had fun with on a mission that seemed so high-ranking, but overall a bit boring. Usually, the shinobi he was sent on missions with to impress him approached the task with a business-like acumen and absolute seriousness, showing that he would not regret having them as his comrades. And of course, Namikaze was always pleased with them. But with Naruto, things were different. This boy was the only one who dared to challenge him twice, without pretending to be something he wasn't. It seemed to be due to his inherent stupidity. Even after losing, he didn't lose heart, but declared that he would definitely win next time. And finally, perhaps only Naruto managed to make Minato smile so many times in 2 days. At such a time, if you look straight ahead, you'll see that I was right, Minato said, nodding forward. Naruto, just opening his mouth to say another taunt, immediately closed it and stared where Minato was pointing. His heart began to beat with delight and impatience, and his hands tightly gripped the straps of his backpack. In the distance, a low wooden fence appeared, surrounding the village that Naruto was so eager to get to. Taking a look at Minato, who was walking slowly, Naruto did not wait for him and took off. However, as he got closer, all his joy faded faster, replaced by a shadow of anxiety. Slowing down, he approached the heavy log gates. They were covered with deep furrows, dotted along and across with kunai and shuriken, as if someone had chosen them as a target for training. His eyes, with pupils widened in surprise, covering almost the entire iris, looked at the fence, making sure that the same fate befell him. So this place was also affected by the war, said Minato, who approached and, like Naruto, was looking at the picture that appeared before them. Unlike Naruto, Minato wasn't surprised. This kind of thing happened all the time, so it would be much more unlikely if the village was safe and sound. After all, as he had mentioned, there was no one to protect the villagers, and despite their good attempts so far, they were not able to stand alone against the shinobi. If Minato seemed calm enough, Naruto was shocked and dumbfounded. He certainly hadn't foreseen this. Somewhere deep inside, anger began to rise towards those who could do this, and towards the entire war in general. He felt the scarlet chakra boiling inside, mixing with his own, burning his chest somewhere around the heart, and if it weren't for Minato's hand on his shoulder, he would hardly have been able to stop himself. This time the residents did not hold their ground, he said quietly, carefully examining the gates, noticing more and more damage. He no longer had any doubts about what had happened. This can't be, Naruto said quietly. Minato glanced at him, seriously worried for Uzumaki, who grabbed his head, ready to burst out screaming. Naruto! Minato began, but was interrupted. That means they took the legacy! Naruto screamed, falling to his knees, throwing his hands up and hanging his head murderously. At first, Minato looked at Uzumaki with confusion, and then sighed, appreciating his latest prank. It would have been worth guessing that it would be like this. Yes, Naruto, it's very funny, Minato said, shaking his head. Okay, it's a little funny, Naruto snorted, standing up and brushing the dry earth off his pants. He still didn't believe that the inhabitants were dead. He hoped that they were at least alive, even if the village had been plundered. In fact, he didn't care whether he found this heritage or not, he was much more concerned about the village and those who lived in it. Aren't you going to do something like that again? Minato asked, looking around the fence for any particularly bad damage. Something like that? Naruto asked, looking questioningly at Namikaze. Well, I don't know, maybe your next step will be to throw a tantrum? Don't worry, you definitely won't see that, Naruto chuckled. Still, he definitely wouldn't test Minato for something like that. So, you do this when you're alone? Minato asked a new question, coming closer to the gate. What? Just don't start screaming again, Minato asked, already preparing for the entire area to shake from Uzumaki's screams. Naruto, who was originally going to do just that, came to the conclusion that it would be wiser to remain silent, so he began to walk back and forth, precisely repeating all of Minato's movements, trying to get him at least this way, but it seemed that Minato didn't care at all about what Naruto had come up with again. So what now? Naruto asked when he got bored with this activity. However, at the same time, he tried to understand what Minato was looking for, looking so carefully at the gate. I think we should go into the village itself and take a look around, Minato said, and immediately jumped over the fence with ease, finding himself on the other side. Naruto did the same, landing next to Minato, who confidently walked towards the dilapidated houses. The village was no different from the others Naruto had visited on missions or when he traveled with Jiraiya. Only the half-ruined buildings no longer reminded him of the life that had once been in full swing in this place. Walking around the village, Naruto realized that it was very small, about the size of a block in Konoha. After stamping around, not knowing where else to go, he saw a crooked paper lantern on one of the houses, cut in half, probably by kunai. Sighing, he raised himself and touched it with his fingertips, connecting the parts. A symbol appeared on the rice paper, which Naruto realized belonged to someone's clan. Perhaps some influential families lived here, too, if he assumed that the attacker was not looking for a legacy, but something else. Biting his lower lip in annoyance, Naruto removed his hand, and the lantern completely fell apart. The torn-off part, with a quiet rustle, spun in the air a few times, and fell to the ground. Silence fell over the area again, covering them with an invisible canvas, only occasionally accompanied by the creaking of the shutters. Naruto, wait! Minato suddenly asked and disappeared, leaving Naruto alone next to the house, the door of which was hanging on one hinge, swinging at the slightest breath of wind, emitting a chilling creak, and with broken windows, in the frames of which sharp shards of glass still remained. Naruto, already accustomed to the fact that Namikaze had a habit of using techniques everywhere, was not offended this time and decided to look around on his own. Approaching the door, which at that moment creaked once again, he carefully pushed it, going inside. He had no idea what he wanted to find. Looking around the room he found himself in, Naruto came to a disappointing conclusion. Surviving after this seemed simply impossible. A picture of complete destruction from the battle opened up before him. An old grandfather clock with a cracked dial and curved copper hands lay against the wall, slashed with kunai. The pendulum, broken in two, lay a little to the side. Nearby, like snow dust, shards of broken glass from the windows sparkled, into which the full moon had already begun to peer, as if it were an involuntary witness to what had happened. The furniture, apparently ripped open by a katana, judging by the very long and deep cuts, was overturned. Uzumaki carefully walked into another room, where the same thing reigned, and stopped in the middle, examining the shards under his feet. The floor was covered in blood. Having looked around and not finding any victims, he calmed down a little. Soon quiet steps were heard, and Minato entered the room. Have you checked everything yet? Naruto asked in surprise. Yes, he nodded. It's the same in all the houses. Who needed to kill the entire village? Naruto asked, genuinely not understanding. An interesting question. Minato muttered thoughtfully, frowning slightly, but saying nothing more. Naruto waited impatiently for him to continue, but Namikaze began to walk carefully around the room, stepping over the shards and seeming not to answer at all. Uzumaki was about to accept this, when suddenly he turned around. But you know what's surprising? Minato asked him. What? I didn't find a single resident, Minato replied. That is. Naruto looked at him uncertainly, still not really understanding what he was getting at, although some assumptions were already starting to appear in the back of his mind. And Naruto would give anything for them not to be faithful. Someone took all the bodies. Yes, Minato confirmed Naruto's guess. Could it be that some of the residents are alive? Naruto suggested, hoping until the very end. It's unlikely, Minato said. Based on what I've seen, it's possible that this is all just a sham and the attack wasn't done with the intent of robbery or blind murder. But it's hard to say for sure. I don't know yet. Naruto just sighed, and then one thing caught his attention. What is this? Naruto asked, bending down and picking up a kunai from the floor. He brought it up to his eyes and examined it, and was greatly surprised. The weapon he found was undoubtedly Konoha's, judging by the fact that the village's mark was engraved on its handle. Handing the kunai to Minato, who only needed a second to understand what was happening, Naruto waited for an answer, but Namikaze was in no hurry to give one, thinking about what was happening. Was this done by someone from Konoha? Naruto asked, unable to contain himself. That's right, Minato agreed. Naruto was starting to get angry. Why was this happening exactly? But this village is located on the territory of the Land of Fire, he responded passionately. So what? Minato responded, slightly surprised. What do you mean what? Naruto asked, offended. He never expected such an answer. Do you think there are few apostates in our country? So you think a missing nin could have done this? Naruto asked, looking around the room and noticing every little detail. It's quite possible. Minato confirmed his guess. Suddenly the door, which had not made any creaking noise before, causing a frightening silence to hang in the air, unexpectedly fell to the floor with a loud crash, frightening Naruto to death as he jumped up. Well? Minato asked calmly, looking first at the door and then at Uzumaki, who looked so scared that he even felt a little sorry for him. What? He barely managed to squeeze out, coming to his senses a little. Should I expect hysteria about this or not? Hey, put yourself in my shoes! Naruto spread his arms, showing that anyone in his place would be in the same state. Should I start wailing like that? Minato asked mockingly, bowing his head. What does this have to do with it? Naruto was offended, crossing his arms over his chest and turning away. But that would put me in your shoes, Minato chuckled. Naruto was about to launch into a murderous tirade, but Namikaze silenced him with a sharp movement of his hand. I sense the presence of someone else's chakra, he said quietly. Is this the one who killed all the villagers? Naruto asked in a whisper, knowing that the question was stupid and most likely it was. Yes, Minato nodded. Let's go, but without unnecessary noise. He headed towards the exit, carefully avoiding everything that was lying on the floor. Naruto followed him, examining the ceiling. Suddenly, a quiet half-scream sounded in the silence, which belonged, of course, to Naruto. Minato turned around at the subsequent crash that came from behind. Seeing the reason, he rolled his eyes to the same ceiling that Naruto had just been examining, and couldn't help but grin briefly. Naruto, not particularly bothering to examine the floor, did not notice the broken boards left after the carnage that had taken place, as a result of which his foot was stuck in them, and he lay sprawled on the floor. Naruto, I thought I warned you to be careful, didn't I? Minato asked, walking up to him. There was no point in pursuing the stranger now. Naruto's scream had probably already caused him to disappear. Of course, There was a chance that Minato would start pursuing him and catch up, and he would definitely be able to do that with the help of the technique. But that was not part of his mission, and leaving Uzumaki alone was also a bad idea. It was an accident, Naruto said, first rising up on his hands and then taking a more or less sitting position. Minato leaned over, carefully took Naruto's stuck leg and carefully pulled it out, but Uzumaki still hissed painfully from this. Another rule of shinobi. Minato grinned, rolling up his pants and examining his leg. Watch where you're going. I'll be more careful in the future, Naruto said through clenched teeth, grimacing in pain. He was even somewhat ashamed of such a blunder, because now he had clearly fallen in Minato's eyes. In both the literal and figurative sense. Although from the latter's look it was not noticeable that he was completely disappointed in Uzumaki. You seem to have looked around the room quite thoroughly before, Minato reminded him. Well, who knew? Naruto answered carelessly, to which Minato only sighed quietly. Just a sprain, he concluded. I'm very glad about that, Naruto said sarcastically, trying to get up. He succeeded, but for some reason he couldn't maintain his balance, and he would have definitely fallen onto the fragments, causing himself even more damage, if not for Minato, who managed to catch him in time, throwing Naruto's arm over his shoulder. Is it like this with you on every mission? He asked. Of course not, Naruto said indignantly, trying to step on his sore leg. This is all your fault. How so? Minato asked. He glanced at him with interest, waiting for Uzumaki to initiate him into this mystery. That's why you were bothering me. Naruto, so you're asking me to be like you? Minato asked, grinning. Like me? Naruto asked. Blue eyes, in the depths of which surprise splashed, met with exactly the same ones. Yes, Minato nodded, explaining. Not thinking and therefore failing missions because of such trifles? He smiled and nodded at his leg. If there are no people like you around, then this won't happen either, Naruto said categorically. Minato snorted. And why was he the only one who fell for all of Naruto's provocations? Just think, one of the best jonin not only of Konoha, but of the whole world, no matter how self-confident it may sound, who had completed many difficult and dangerous missions, who was considered a formidable opponent in the eyes of others, to fight with whom or against whom it was an honor for them, and much, much more, behaved exactly like the boy he had accidentally met a couple of days ago. Minato, of course, was not for the most part what others imagined him to be. Much of what was known about him was not true and was composed only of eyewitness accounts and subsequent speculation. Just legends that circulated around him during his lifetime. But Namikaze never allowed himself to behave like that either. Was he always like this, and his image of a demanding shinobi simply an attempt to behave based on the demands and hopes of those around him? Let's make a bet, Minato suddenly suggested. What? Naruto asked with interest, even forgetting about the argument. If you can do without me for one day, then you win. If you can't, then I win. How do you like it? Minato asked. Sure, another argument wasn't such a good idea, but what wouldn't you do to brighten up a mission? And it was the only way to prove to Naruto that he sometimes increased his importance. I agree, Naruto replied, smiling. We'll just start tomorrow. Okay, Minato nodded. Let's make wishes now. I wouldn't suggest something like that if I were you, Minato said, looking at Naruto with a grin. Ha! If I lost twice, it doesn't mean I'll lose now. As you say, Minato agreed. Great. Can you walk? Minato asked, a note of worry in his voice. No, but I'll definitely be able to tomorrow, Naruto assured him, knowing that the Nine Tails would complete its task overnight. Okay, but we'll still have to spend the night in the forest, Minato said. Initially, that was the plan. If it weren't for Naruto, who suggested stopping by the village, apparently for the hot springs. It's unlikely that Minato would have remembered the existence of this village at all if Uzumaki hadn't been nearby, to whom Minato for some reason began to make various concessions, which was also extremely strange. In any case, It was necessary to report what he had seen to Konoha and move on. Big deal! Naruto snorted with displeasure. So you don't mind? Minato asked. I don't mind, but I still haven't found the legacy, he said resentfully, thinking to himself that he hadn't really been looking. Perhaps whoever did this was also looking for him, Minato suggested, hoping to hear what Naruto himself thought about it. Do you think so? Naruto's eyes immediately widened in surprise and some kind of horror. Well, if that were the case, then whoever found it would gain enormous power. Minato laughed, calming Naruto down a little, who was extremely upset that someone was able to get ahead of him. Naruto, I'm using the Flying Thunder God technique, hold on tight, Minato warned him. Naruto, throwing all his weight onto his good leg, clung to Namake's, closing his eyes for a second. Hearing a quiet chuckle in his ear, he opened them slightly, seeing that they were standing next to a dense thicket in some small clearing, located at a considerable distance from that village. The wind was chilling his skin, getting under his clothes and penetrating right through. Naruto walked away from Minato, falling next to a tree, and shuddered from another strong gust. Can we at least make a fire? He asked, trembling all over. You can't. Minato nodded and, having searched through his backpack, handed Naruto his sweater, which he accepted with gratitude, immediately putting on. The nights that reigned near the border were indeed cool, so Minato was not surprised that Naruto had frozen so quickly, at least judging by the fact that he preferred the sun to any other weather. The lit fire, crackling and throwing bright sparks into the grass, quickly attracted Naruto, who was sitting next to him at a dangerously close distance. Closing his eyes, he enjoyed the warmth and peace, only occasionally distracted by the aching pain in his leg, but which could be ignored. Sleep was falling with increasing force, and Naruto, not having the strength to resist it, wanted to fall asleep, but was mercilessly returned to reality by Minato shaking him. What? Naruto muttered, trying to focus his gaze. Naruto, go sleep there. Minato pointed to the tree Naruto had previously chosen and the futon laid out next to it, which had been summoned from the scroll earlier. Okay. Naruto agreed without objection, moving to the indicated place. From here, the warmth of the fire still reached him, so Naruto closed his eyes again, hoping that Minato would be watching what was happening that night. Good night, he muttered, opening his eye. It depends. The corners of Minato's lips lifted. Oh, come on, we'll swap tomorrow, Naruto replied, smiling slightly. Naruto was ready to accept any help from Minato today, but with the first rays of the sun he would have to forget about it until the next day, and Uzumaki understood this perfectly well. This time he set himself the goal of winning. Minato cast a last searching glance at him and headed towards the fire, knowing that Naruto would not even talk to him tomorrow, but nevertheless, he was not going to lose to him either.